You've been at war with yourself your entire life. Every self-help book you've read, every therapy session, every morning routine you've forced yourself through, all of it has been built on one devastating assumption, that you are fundamentally broken and need to be fixed. But what if that assumption is the very thing destroying you? Alan Watts saw through this illusion decades ago. He watched the Western world exhaust itself in an endless battle against its own nature, and he laughed. Not with cruelty, but with the compassion of someone who knows a secret that could set you free. You were never broken. The entire self-improvement industry is built on a lie, the lie that you need to become someone other than who you already are. Today, we're going to dismantle that lie piece by piece. And by the end, you might just stop fighting the one battle you were never meant to win. The cosmic joke. Alan Watts had a way of making you feel like you'd been living your entire life backwards. Born in England in 1915, he became one of the most influential interpreters of Eastern philosophy for Western audiences. But his message wasn't about becoming more spiritual or achieving enlightenment through effort. It was far more radical than that. Watts saw that modern humans were caught in what he called the great cosmic joke. We spend our lives trying to improve ourselves, not realizing that the self doing the improving and the self being improved are the same thing. Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. Think about it. Every time you set out to fix yourself, who exactly is doing the fixing? The same mind that created the problem in the first place. It's like trying to make your hand grab itself. The harder you try, the more impossible it becomes. This isn't just philosophy, it's a trap that millions of people fall into every single day. And recognizing this trap is the first step to escaping it. The illusion of lack. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The entire self-improvement industry, worth over $10 billion, is built on making you feel inadequate. Every advertisement, every influencer, every program starts with the same premise. You are not enough as you are. You need to be thinner, richer, more productive, more mindful, more successful. The message is always the same. You are lacking something essential. But Watts asked a dangerous question. What if this feeling of lack is artificial? What if it was installed in you by a culture that profits from your dissatisfaction? Consider this. A baby doesn't feel broken. A tree doesn't feel inadequate. The ocean doesn't wake up thinking it needs to improve itself. Nature knows no lack. Only humans, with our complex minds and relentless cultural conditioning, walk around feeling fundamentally insufficient. Watts suggested this wasn't a flaw in our nature. It was a flaw in our thinking. The feeling of being broken isn't evidence that you need fixing. It's evidence that you've been deceived about your true nature. But this deception goes even deeper than you might imagine. The ego trap. Watts identified the root of our suffering in something he called the ego illusion. Now, ego doesn't mean arrogance here. It means the sense of being a separate self, a little person living inside your head, looking out at a hostile world through the windows of your eyes. This separate self feels vulnerable, isolated, and fundamentally alone. And so it does what any isolated creature would do. It tries to protect itself, improve itself, make itself more secure. The ego is nothing other than the focus of conscious attention. But here's the twist Watts revealed. This separate self doesn't actually exist. It's a useful fiction like the equator or the horizon. You can't actually find the equator anywhere. It's just a concept we use to navigate. Similarly, you can't find the ego anywhere in your brain or body. It's a mental construct. When you try to improve this fictional self, you're polishing a mirage. When you try to fix it, you're repairing something that was never broken because it was never really there in the first place. This changes everything about how we approach personal growth. The double bind. Now we arrive at what Watts considered the cruelest trap of all, the double bind of self-improvement. It works like this. You feel anxious. Society tells you anxiety is bad and you should fix it. So now you're anxious about being anxious. You try meditation to calm down, but you get frustrated that meditation isn't working fast enough. Now you're anxious about being anxious and frustrated with your meditation practice. Each attempt to fix yourself creates a new problem to fix. It's an infinite regression, like standing between two mirrors and seeing your reflection stretch into eternity. Resistance creates more resistance. Watts pointed out that this is exactly what happens when you try to relax. The moment you try to relax, you've already failed, because trying is the opposite of relaxing. The same applies to trying to be happy, trying to be confident, trying to be peaceful. The very effort defeats the purpose. Most self-help fails because it doesn't acknowledge this fundamental paradox. It tells you to work harder at accepting yourself, which is a contradiction in terms. But if effort doesn't work, what does? Spontaneous living. Watts found the answer in a concept from Taoism called wu-wei, often translated as effortless action or non-doing. But don't mistake this for passivity or laziness. Wu-wei is about acting in harmony with the natural flow of life rather than constantly swimming upstream. Think about how you digest food. You don't consciously direct each enzyme, each muscle contraction. It happens spontaneously, effortlessly, perfectly. Now think about how you walk. When you first learned, it required intense concentration. Now it's automatic. You don't think about walking, you just walk. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Watts suggested that our psychological problems work the same way. When you stop stirring the mud, when you stop constantly analyzing, fixing, and improving, clarity emerges naturally. This doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you stop doing violence to yourself in the name of self-improvement. You stop treating yourself as an enemy to be conquered. The question then becomes, how do we actually live this way in a world that constantly demands we improve ourselves? Accepting darkness. Here's where Watts diverges sharply from most self-help gurus. He didn't believe in positive thinking. He didn't think you should suppress negative emotions or always look on the bright side. Instead, he advocated for something far more radical: complete acceptance of your darkness, your shadow, your fears, your anger, your petness. All of it is part of you, and trying to cut it out is like trying to have a coin with only one side. You cannot have light without darkness, and you cannot be good without knowing evil. Watts understood something that Carl Jung also discovered. What we resist persists. The parts of ourselves we try to eliminate don't disappear. They go underground and gain power. The person desperately trying to be positive becomes secretly depressed. The person trying to be humble becomes secretly arrogant about their humility. Embrace your complete self. Real wholeness comes not from fixing your flaws, but from accepting them as part of your complete nature. This is terrifying for most people to hear, but it's also the most liberating truth Watts ever taught, and it connects to something even deeper about reality itself. The game of life. Watts often described life as a game that we've forgotten we're playing. Somewhere along the way, we started taking it deadly seriously. We believed the rules were real, the stakes were real, and that we had to win at all costs. But what if life is more like music than a race? We thought of life by analogy with a journey, a pilgrimage, which had a serious purpose at the end. When you listen to music, you don't rush through to get to the end. The point isn't to finish the song, the point is to enjoy each note as it plays. Imagine if you approached a symphony the way you approach life, fast-forwarding to the finale, skipping the slow movements, anxiously wondering when it will be over. You'd miss everything. Pointless. Watts suggested our lives have become exactly this: absurd. We rush through childhood to become teenagers, through education to get jobs, through jobs to reach retirement, and then we wonder why we feel empty. The destination was never the point. The playing was always the point. But how do you actually start playing when you've been trained your whole life to achieve? Being the universe. Now we arrive at Watts' most profound teaching and his most difficult to accept. You are not in the universe. You are the universe, not metaphorically, literally. Your body is made of atoms forged in dying stars. The breath entering your lungs right now has been breathed by every creature that ever lived. The water in your cells has cycled through clouds, oceans, dinosaurs, and ancient forests. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way a wave is something the ocean is doing. When you understand this, really understand it, not just intellectually but in your bones, the whole project of self-improvement looks different. Improving yourself is like a wave trying to improve itself separate from the ocean. It makes no sense. You are not an isolated fragment trying to survive in a hostile universe. You are how the universe experiences itself in this particular place, at this particular time. You are the cosmos. This isn't mystical nonsense. It's basic physics understood at the deepest level. And it transforms everything about how you relate to yourself. Practical wisdom. So what do we actually do with all this? Watts was often asked this question, and his answer might surprise you. He didn't prescribe meditation retreats or spiritual disciplines. Instead, he suggested something far simpler. Just notice. Notice when you're at war with yourself. Notice when you're treating yourself as a problem to be solved. Notice the endless mental chatter that tells you you're not good enough. The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. You don't have to stop these thoughts. You don't have to fix them. Just see them clearly for what they are: thoughts, not reality, not truth, just mental weather passing through. The awareness that sees these thoughts is already free. It was never broken. It doesn't need improving. It's the space in which all improvement happens and fails to happen. When you identify with that awareness instead of with your thoughts about yourself, you discover something remarkable. You were always already what you were trying to become. But there's one final piece that brings this all together: radical freedom. Alan Watts didn't die a saint or a guru. He struggled with alcoholism, failed marriages, and financial troubles. Some critics point to this as evidence that his philosophy didn't work, but Watts would have laughed at this criticism. He never claimed to be fixed or perfected. He lived as a beautifully flawed expression of the universe, exploring itself. And that's exactly the point. The freedom Watts offered isn't the freedom to become perfect. It's the freedom to be perfectly imperfect, to stop measuring yourself against an impossible ideal, to finally call off the war you've been waging against your own nature. This is radical freedom, not freedom to become someone else, but freedom to finally be who you already are. The broken human, the confused seeker, the anxious mind, all of it is welcome. All of it is you. All of it is the universe dancing in your particular form. Stop fixing, start living. You were never broken. You were just convinced you were. And that conviction was the only thing that ever needed to change. Alan Watts left us with a message that cuts through decades of self-help nonsense. You are not a problem to be solved. The endless cycle of self-improvement, self-criticism, and self-rejection. It was never going to lead anywhere because there was never anywhere to go. This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. And instead of calling it work, realize it is play. Today, wherever you are, whatever you're struggling with, whatever flaws you think disqualify you from happiness, consider that they might be exactly right. Not because they're good or bad, but because they are you. And you are how the universe is expressing itself right now in this form, in this moment. You are already complete. Stop fighting. Start living. The war is over not because you won, but because you realized there was never an enemy. If this shifted something in you, subscribe for more wisdom that actually sets you free.